In this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make ourselves a column. Now, in this case, I already have my max file open. It already has the image plane in it. It has the reference inside of there. If you were to take a look here, you would see I have a folder, and inside it is my reference image, as well as my max file. Now, I set up this file with some things in mind. The spline this column that we're gonna make today, we're gonna bring into a game engine. And so previously we had set up our max start files with a number of things in mind. We set up the customize unit setup, system unit setup. We set it up so that 1 unit equals 1 centimeter. We also went up here to our grid, right click on this, go into home grid, and our grid spacing is at 100 units. That means that any one time we have grids, that's a meter. And so this is actually, I set it up so our column is going to be 4 meters tall. It's centered at 0. That means we're going to bring in a 4 meter tall column with the capital on it as well. So let's go ahead. I'm going to make my front view active. And we'll start off by making the actual column, round part of the column first. I'm going to come here to create. I'm going to make sure I'm on shapes. I'm going to go to rectangle, and I'm going to make this similar to how we had made some of our other objects by just making some shapes here. Remember, you don't necessarily worry about making everything perfect. Kind of want to get the general feel of it. And if you're having a difficult time seeing the splines as you select them, because they are selected white over a white background, just open up your max file, double click on the material, make your diffuse color black, and go into maps and reduce the amount for the diffuse color, like set it to like 25. And what that'll do is that makes the image be blended with whatever color you set. And so it's a little bit easier to see things now. Go in, add 2 more shapes. There we go. All right, so let's grab the main rectangle here, convert to edit spline. And him, I'm actually going to take him before I do anything and make sure my max movement is set to view. And I'm going to make sure this object is centered at 0, because then its origin is at 0. I can right click and say convert to edit spline. I can start attaching these other spline shapes to it. Now let's grab everything, go into vertex here, grab all our points, right click on one of them and just go to corner. So now they're all corners. Now let's grab the segment here for the actual main spline body and drag it over. Grab this one point, and we'll move him in a little bit because it's got a slight taper. And now we can start to refine our shape, right? Like down here, I'm cautious against zooming in too much. The reference is blurry. You don't want to get in there too close. You don't need to. You just kind of want to see generally what these things are. Like I've switched to segment mode here. I'm going to lower it down. And then this point, maybe I'll take it and do a slight chamfer on it. Chamfer 1 worked good. And here maybe I'll just select that point and enter a value of 1 for a chamfer. And I can move these, select these points, move them over a little bit. Down. I'll always be going back in and right click and saying corner on these guys because I just want those to be regular corners. The reason I'm not making my objects too round is because I am concerned about polygon count, and that's how many polygons you have in a model. Let's take this to a chamfer of 1. That's too much. Undo that. We'll just say 0.5. And then we could, these guys stay pretty much solid going all the way across. Let's just compare. Yeah, maybe I'll bring this in a little bit. This guy can come out a little bit more. All right, good. Let's select the main spline, and we're going to use Boolean, and we're just going to Boolean all these together. Oops. See how I do Boolean and it cuts that out? I had my Boolean, I just realized I actually had it set on subtraction. So I want to go in there and make sure it's set to union. There we go. Can't believe I missed that. All right. Oh, look, we had a little gap there. Let's undo that. Go into segment. Just raise that up a little bit. Or maybe I'll grab these two segments and lower that down. That's even better. Go back to the spline and Boolean those together. Okay. You can hit Z to zoom out. I'm going to go into segment and grab everything that's not that outermost edge and just get rid of those. And now I'm just going to come to editable spline. Let's go find Lathe. It's alphabetical. I should be able to find it. There it is. All right, and you can see now it's casting a shadow. So I'm just going to change my view from standard. I'm going to click in here, and under lighting and shadows, I'm just going to say eliminate with scene lights. And then I'm also going to turn off shadows. And while I'm at it, I'm going to turn off ambient occlusion. There we go. Now I can see my reference better. All right. So there's my main column shape. If I do restore viewport, you'll notice that the changes I made to the viewport are only for that one specific view. I would have to turn the shadows and everything off here. So let's go over here, modify, turn on backface cull. We see that our column is not inside out. The default is 16 sides, I think, is just fine for this column. That'll be great. All right, so we have that shape. Let's work on the base next. And so we're going to do that in a similar fashion. We're going to come in here, and we're just going to make a rectangle. And then we'll do like 2 more. Maybe, yeah, 3 more. And then we'll put a couple in here. Segment this down. There we go. All right, so it's going to be our base. Same thing. We'll select the main one, right-click, convert to edit spline, and go into attach, and attach these different pieces together. You may have to zoom in, which I did rolling my middle mouse wheel. Right-click to get out of that. Select the spline, and then with Boolean, go through and Boolean those different elements together. And so now we're getting our different pieces are coming together. We'll go into segment and we'll get rid of everything but that outer edge. Go into vertex and grab all the points, make sure they're all corners. These, I'm not really going to refine any of these subtly. I kind of like them as they are. Let's go into wireframe here. Yep, perfect. And now the next step is, I actually want to use bevel profile for this. And so I'm going to make a rectangle shape. So let's come in here and do a rectangle that's going to represent kind of the base. I'm going to go to modify, because now that I have kind of the general shape, let's make sure it's sitting at 0. And then I'm going to take the value, I think it's this one, not the longest one, but the more narrow one. So maybe we just put it to 50 and 50. I think it'll probably be good. All right, there we go. There's our rectangle. And what I'm going to do is something a little bit weird. I'm just going to take the rectangle as it is and put bevel profile on it. And I'm going to switch from improved to classic. And I'm going to pick a profile, which would be the actual low profile shape there. And there we go. Now you see it, it's rotated the wrong direction. So let's go out here, go to our left view. We'll go to rotate. I'm going to turn on angle snap toggle, which toggles at increments of 5 units. We're just going to rotate it around. There we go. So 90 degrees. And I'm going to take it and I move to movement mode now. I'm going to move it down to 0. All right. So you can see there's our profile. It's right, it's just it's smaller than we want it to be. So we just need to come into Profile Gizmo, and here in the top view, we're just going to move it over to the side to get it larger like we want to come out. And there we go. There's our column base. All right, very good. And we'll just click on Bevel Profile. And now we just need to do the same thing up here at the top. So let's come up here and we're going to build this shape. And so we'll come into create. And once again, we're just going to draw out that all those different little details. And we don't, like I said, don't have to match it perfectly. You just want to get the general feel of what all those different elements are doing for you. And that's kind of why I don't have like perfect, super tight and detailed reference for you. The fact that it's a little blurry actually works to my purposes of driving home that you don't need to be ultra precise with this. All right. Again, I'm going to grab the largest one. I'm going to zero him out so he is centered in the world. And centering at the world, it's not required for everything that you do. It's just because I know that my model is supposed to be centered at the world. I can convert this to an edit spline. And I'm just going to grab that one outer edge, maybe drag it out a little bit. And now I'm going to go into attach and start attaching the different pieces together. So they're all kind of one big happy shape. I'm going to go into spline, select that main spline, go into Boolean, make sure union's on. And then we just go through and start combining them all together to make one big happy shape. And then again, we'll go into segment and get rid of the top and the sides and everything. So wireframe. Oh, looks like at this point he could come up a little bit. And the only spot I did want to make a slight adjustment was I wanted to move this over, but also I did want to grab all these points and make them into, I need to make sure when I right click on them, I'm right clicking on a point. There we go, corner, perfect, okay. So there we go, there's our general shape. You'll notice that it really comes in a lot. I actually want it to sit out further, so I'm just going to move it over. I want it to be a little bit larger than the actual top. There we go. So same deal as before, I'm going to go to create and make a rectangle. So if I click and drag to kind of get that general shape, right click to get out of rectangle, make sure I'm in move, and I'm going to zero it out here on X so it's centered. And then same thing, go to modify, find the bevel profile modifier, set it to classic, and then pick our new profile shape. If we orbit around, we see there it is. So let's move over here on the left, and we'll go into rotate again. And we're going to rotate it up. And now we're going to go to move, but we're going to move it down so it's just sitting just above the top of this model. And what we could do actually is if we come down here to vertex and select that one point at the top, we can actually copy its value, go back up there to lathe, and then select this shape because it is sitting. We should be able to just paste that same value in so it's sitting exactly on top of it. So now if we zoom out, this is what we ended up with. And so let's grab all these models, come over here to display, and I'm going to turn on backface color. You see it has a little minus? That's because one object already has it. If I click it, now they all have it. And we could just check to make sure that nothing needs to be flipped around. It looks like, if you look at this, it looks like our rectangle we used was not perfectly square. So let's take a look. It's not. You see that? The sides are a little bit different. So let's set it to be, since it is smaller on one side, what if we set it to a value of 50 on both sides? That's way too much. I think it's coming out too far. It doesn't look right to me. Maybe let's undo that. And it looks like that one value is like 49. Let's set a value of 49. So it's not quite going all the way out everywhere. All right. So now we have a column. Of course, it's in 3 pieces. So what we're going to do here, I have the base selected. What I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to go to create. And before we do this, let's save our project. I'm going to create, and I'm going to make a box with keyboard entry that has a length of 100, a width of 100, and a height of 100. I am typing and using tab to move to the different parts here. I'm here in my perspective view. I'm going to hit create. I'm going to right click and say convert to editable poly. I want to go into attach. I'm going to start attaching all these different pieces together. If I go into wireframe, I'll be able to see it. I could also at this point just go into element and select the box geo and delete it. And then it'll be easier for me to Just click on the base. So now what I've done is I made a box in the world. It has no scale on it. It has no rotation. Its origin is at the center of the world. And now I've attached those pieces to it. They're all one object that I can move around as I need to. I can give it a name. I can call this BN. That's my initials. You would use yours, underscore column. Right? And now you have this column object. And later on in the quarter, we're going to utilize this for some other stuff. Right? We're going to end up bringing this into, we're going to create textures for it. We're going to bring it into a game engine. If you move it over to the side, you'll notice your splines are still in there. After you create a model, I'm going to right click and say unfreeze all. Once you've made a model from reference, you can delete that reference. You could also go in and, if you wanted, select your model and just like move it over a little bit. You can grab those splines and delete those. 2, you don't necessarily need those. You could save them, of course, if you want to, because maybe you'll want to use them in the future. But for the purposes of what we're doing, we have our column. We'll go to display. One last thing, turn on backface cull. That's perfect. Nothing is inside out. If anything ever was inside out, you would just go into element and click on it. And under edit elements, there's an option to flip things inside or outside. So there you go. That's working with splines, making a column. Now we actually have something that we'll be able to use for a couple more assignments this quarter.